The Road to War. Written and narrated by John Miro. Get more at servingworlds.com. '26. In fold, aboard Ryson. The elevator was moving as slowly as the airlock door had. It shook and groaned as it inched up the shaft into the hub of Ryson's wheel section. "Please, Lieutenant Sue, let me go." Dr. Mantell stood between Willard and Bowen. She was back in her fancy spacesuit despite her assuring them the hub had a stable atmosphere. Her face mask was open, and a pair of imploring, soulful eyes were set on a face disconnected from any emotion. "You don't really get people, do you, Doctor?" She sighed, and the manufactured emotion in her eyes faded. "Not really. What should I say to save my life?" "We're going up. Done deal," Bowen said flatly. "Want to take another crack at telling us what we'll find?" "Bodies?" Mantell suggested. "There was a lot of screaming, and I just locked the pressure door behind me and ran for the elevator." "You never stopped to check?" Bowen's voice was thick with disgust. "To help? That would reduce the effectiveness of my running for my life," Mantell told him, as if explaining something to a 5-year-old. "You're wrong in the head," Bowen said. "So I've been told," Mantell agreed. "Still, there are benefits. Brilliant intellect. Good genes. I can hold my breath for 16 minutes. "No more talking," Bowen growled. The silence in the elevator held until the car jerked to a stop. "Gentlemen, please." Mantell backed up against the elevator's rear wall. Willard and Bowen each put a hand on her shoulders. She sighed. "At least go first. If it takes her a while to kill you, I still might get away." The elevator tone chimed. The doors opened onto a curving corridor with the same pressure as the elevator. A warm, lit space. No sign of violence. Dr. Karina Mantell yelped as strong hands pushed her out of the elevator. Willard and Bowen were unarmed. There weren't supposed to be anyone to shoot before the fleet arrived at the intercept point in the trial system. The only firearms authorized outside of training missions belonged to military police and special investigators. They stepped into the corridor back to back. They walked all around the elevator shaft. There were 2 more elevator shafts in the core and the same triple redundancy systems they'd observed in Ryson's lower deck. Bright and warm, but no people. They navigated the wide circular hall back to the elevator doors they'd arrived through. 4 pressure doors on the outside of the circle marked the 4 spokes leading out to the outer ring of the wheel. "Which spoke?" Willard asked. Mantell just stared back with her dead eyes. Creepy. "No problem," Bowen said, sauntering to the pressure door and reaching for the touchscreen. "Which is the button for public address? Maybe your mysterious she wants to come say hi." "I'll take you," Mantell bleated, putting her hand on Bowen's arm and pushing it away from the display. "Don't draw attention. We're in danger." "So take us," Bowen said, pulling away from her touch, lip curled in disgust. "And fill us in on the way, or we go in blind and send you ahead first again. Your choice." Something clicked inside the good doctor as Willard watched. "Fine, spoke 3. But first," she walked a few paces down the hall and punched numbers into another wall-mounted touchscreen. "If there's no avoiding this, let's get you armed." "Better," Bowen purred approvingly, patting the short machine gun dangling under his right armpit from a black shoulder sling. Willard had strapped one on as well. Dr. Mantell had reached her hand into the hallway weapons cache as well, but Bowen had removed it with a firm shake of his head. All her protests fell on their disinterested ears, so she switched gears back to that creepy emotionless manner of hers as they started down the spoke. "As soon as the Articles of Alliance had been signed and the new government began building this fleet, my team and I were set up here." My team. What a joke. bunch of babysitters. I haven't needed a babysitter since I was 2. When I said fill us in, Bowen told Mentel, I didn't mean your life story. We've got 3 pressure doors and almost half a kilometer to cross, Lieutenant. I'll get to it. Willard rolled his eyes. Get to it faster. He kept an eye out for working access panels as they made their way toward the next blue and white pressure door, 100 meters down the spoke. His interface and ship's comms were still down. Not only were exterior signals blocked, but something was blocking internal signals as well. Armed was good. Informed would be better. The first edict from the Alliance concerning my work was that I continue it with others, Mentel grumbled. They assigned me a team of 5 peers who could barely keep up when I talked slow and used little words. Then they sandbagged me with a dozen research assistants who barely knew how to fab a neuron, let alone splice one. Working with others? Bowen said. Sounds horrible, Doc. Slowing my process is horrible for everyone. Haven't you been listening? It took a month before my team approved mass production of the first-gen interface implants. A month of my life wasted teaching those imbeciles enough to have any hope of understanding my work, let alone improving on it. Finally, we handed off line production and quality control of the implants and moved on to cleaning up Jean's mess with the gravity drive. He was so proud of the Bargana drive, but it really wasn't any improvement on relativistic engines before I started on it. I mean, really. What good is a drive system that can't push past 10% without turning everything on board into pancakes? So you're a brain surgeon and a rocket scientist? Willard asked. Mentel sniffed. Artificial distinction. It's all just atoms and code. They reached the first door. After a short argument, Mentel agreed to work the manual release for the door while Bowen and Willard readied their rifles to cover her and the hall beyond. There was nothing in the section of spoke beyond but another 100-meter walk. The interface tech is simple biomechanics. I coded abstraction and translation layers for the mind to measure and interpret external data sources. After we cleaned up Bargana's grav drive mess, we slapped together the specialized interfaces for mechs and pilots in a few weeks. She sighed. But again, it took 6 weeks before the idiot sticks Fleet calls my peers would agree to sign off on mass production. She threw up her hands. 2 whole weeks they made me slave to fix a bug that affected less than 1 interface out of 1,000. What was the bug? Willard asked. Don't encourage her, Bowen whispered. A glitch that reduced priority for biologic functions in favor of increasing data transfer speed between a host organism and the slaved machine. 0.0-something% of interfaces told the pilots to stop breathing during initial interface. Willard spun around. He had to fight not to slam the butt of his rifle into her perfect earther teeth. There's close to 20,000 people in this fleet, and we're all getting those experimental implants of yours. You didn't think it was worth a couple of weeks of boring work to save 20-30 lives? This is war, Dr. Mentel told Willard. A smug smile planted firmly on her face. I needed to get back to my Wilder prototype. Bowen's fist crunched into Mentel's nose. The woman landed on her ass, eyes unfocused. She slurred a few words, heard they made no sense, and shook her head. She glared up at Bowen. You can't hit me. I'm our only hope against the takers. My brother stopped breathing for 4 minutes the first time they strapped him in a mech, Bowen said, his voice unsteady. You telling me that's down to you? Willard reached down and hauled her to her feet by the back of her hooded sweater. She gurgled and choked, and her eyes conveyed to Willard honest, animal panic. Only the second honest emotion he'd seen since they'd met. If she was starting to fear them half as much as she feared what she'd left at the end of this corridor, well, that was fine with Willard. I know why they stuck you with that team, Willard snarled. Only human beings should make life or death decisions for other human beings. Mentel didn't dare offer any response, and all 3 of them stayed quiet through the next pressure door. You have been listening to Reach, The Road to War. Written and narrated by John Miro. Music, All This by Kevin MacLeod at Incompetech.com. Hear more of the story at servingworlds.com. Thank you for listening.